G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope you are super well. This is just a quick video. Some people are really excited to hear about new firmware announcements, and today we have a surprise firmware announcement, not for one, not for two, not for three, but for four of Nikon's Z cameras. The Z6, the Z7, the Z6 II, and the Z7 have all had firmware updates. Now, before we get any further, the Z6 and the Z7 are very minor updates, and for the Z6 II and the Z7 II, I would say they are minor to medium updates. So we're very quickly going to go through those updates. After we go through the specs of the new firmware, we'll talk a little bit at the end of this video about, well, what's the chances of the Z6 II and the Z7 II getting further firmware updates around AF. And whilst we get there, ponder on the fact that the Expeed 6 and the Expeed 7 are extraordinarily different speed processors. Let's talk about firmware update 3.6 for the Z6 and the Z7. For those of you that don't know what this is the MCN10. Now, it is a remote controller for the Z series cameras. When it originally came out, I think it was only compatible with maybe one camera, the Z9, and over time, Nikon are rolling it out to what appears to be every Z camera. What is exciting about today's firmware announcement, for me, as I own two Z6s and one Z7, is the MCN10 is now compatible with this firmware update for the Z6 and the Z7. Now, quickly touching on what this does if you've never seen it before, and if you have seen it before and you know what it does, just jump to the next index on this video, just down there. But if you don't, this is a remote controller. And as you will see here, it mimics what we can see on the back of, say, a Z9 or a Z8, and also a Z6, Z7, and so on. It mimics a lot of the buttons, a lot of the layout, but it's run by remote control, USB-C to USB-C. Now, I've used this in the field for professional work. I absolutely love it, and it's a wonderful ergonomic step to making a mirrorless hybrid camera. This is a camera not designed for videographers in mind. This is a camera designed for stills photographers. Once you have it up on a tripod, and you're not even touching the camera anymore because you can use this remote control device to do probably about 95% of the functionality that you need to do, all from this controller here. And when I say 95%, it's also 95% of the time. For example, you can't hardware zoom from here, but you can software zoom with your Z8 and your Z9. I love this controller. I love the fact that we can put these things on a big fluid head like this, and we have beautiful control like you find with a proper, dedicated, ergonomically designed video camera. And that's it. The Z6 and the Z7 update, that's all this new firmware update does. It gives us functionality for this right here. I'm super excited about it. And we are looking at firmware update 1.6 for the Z6 II and the Z7 II. We can now have the red record box on the screen as well as in the EVF. Now, it seems like a minor thing, I suspect, to some people, but for those that do video recording, probably one of the single biggest sins of a video camera operator is you button on when you think you're buttoning off, and you button off when you think you're buttoning on, and thus you record the break between takes and you don't record the take. This is something that can happen, and when it does, it's very frustrating. What this visual indicator does for the video operator is it makes it even clearer that you're recording and not recording. For video operators, this is actually a small, big one, or a big, small one. I think it's a small, big one. These additions have been made to the custom setting menu. Added, always, and only when flash is not used options for custom setting D9. Added D10, warm display colors. Warm display colors is that really cool feature that we first saw, I'm not sure if it's in other cameras prior, to the Z9, where you could make the whole display go a sort of dark red color. What's fantastic about this is it aids in not losing your night vision when you're out in the dark, perhaps, say, shooting stars or wildlife, and you do not want your eyes to adjust to the bright white light that comes out of your camera. Also, they've added D11, which is image frame. What this feature is adding a very subtle frame around the edge. In this first image, it's off, but now we can see here a very subtle grey line around the edge of the imaging frame. And then, of course, G7, which we already talked about, which is the red record frame around the screen, and the EVF. Also added Find a Display Size Photo LV to the Setup menu. Also, the Prioritize Viewfinder Monitor mode has been replaced by Prioritize Viewfinder 1 and Prioritize Viewfinder 2. Also, they've fixed the following bugs. A drop in brightness sometimes occurred in part of photographs taken using a flash. In some cases, the OK button could not be used to interrupt the interval timer or focus shift photography when viewfinder was used. Focus could still be adjusted using the focus ring when disable was selected for manual focus ring in AF mode in the custom setting menu, if an option other than non-linear was chosen for focus ring rotation range in the custom setting menu. The updates to the Z7 II appear to be identical to the Z6 II. This is a middling update to the Z6 II and the Z7 II. And I do want to touch on the fact that, of course, as someone who owns, as I've said, two Z6s, a Z7, and I also own a Z6 II, of course, we want to continue to see as many updates as possible for the systems that we have invested in. I completely agree. And of course, the Z6 and the Z7, now being up to firmware 3.6, has had a lot of updates and has come a long way. Totally agree. I think when we think about the Z6 II and the Z7 II, and I'm not being an apologist here, Nikon was able with firmware 1 of the Z6 II and the Z7 II to be a lot further advanced than the Z6 and the Z7 were on launch. These were the very first cameras in the system. So I don't think we can think of Z6 firmware 1 as being at the same sort of place of evolution and advancement as the Z6 II and Z7 II were on launch. They were maybe a version 2 or a 2.5. I can't remember exactly where we were up to, but something in that order. Because these were, the Z6 and the Z7, the very first Z cameras to be launched, they have had the furthest distance to travel and the longest time to travel that distance, which of course means more time for firmware. And they have been in the market almost twice as long as the Z6 II and the Z7 II. This does not put aside the fact that some who own Z6 IIs and Z7 IIs were hoping to see AF advancements coming in firmware. They wanted it to get faster. Now, I made a video something like a year ago now, which you can see here, which talks about, it speculates on why, well, there has actually been quite a lot of additions. There is quite a lot of things that the Z6 II and the Z7 do that the Z6 and the Z7 don't do. There's quite a lot of stuff going on around frame rates and being able to see more into the dark with focus and so on. There's actually quite a lot of little differences. Whether it's possible for there to be AF advancements because of that second processor, which we've talked at length about what that means. It never means double. It never means double. It simply never means double. Two processors, there's always overhead just sharing between two processors. But I don't want to litigate that today. Maybe there is more AF advancements to come from these cameras. Who knows? I don't know. Obviously, it hasn't come in this update, and that will be a disappointment for those that want it, need it, and think it should be here. And I'm not going to litigate one way or the other whether I think it's possible anymore. I've talked about it a lot in the past. But if it is going to come, I hope it does come soon for those that want it. These cameras have been in the market for 2 years and 9 months, so heading on towards 3 years. And of course, there'll be some people like me that bought the Z6 II and the Z7 II at the start of that over 2.5 years. So, we'd like to see more happen, I suppose. Who knows whether it's possible? it might not be possible. Nikon have officially told us that the Expeed 7 is 10 times faster than the dual processor in the Z7. Now, that is a lot. So any notion that the focus system can be anywhere near a Z8 or a Z9, it's just not going to happen. It's 10 times more advanced. Of course, all of us that have the Z6 and need something faster than what we've already got, personally, I've never found it lacking, but I don't do birds in flight, I don't do wildlife. But of course, that massive difference in processors between the 2x Expeed 6 and the Expeed 7 simply means that any camera, and we're not just talking about the Z6 II and the Z7 II, every other Expeed 6 camera is simply never going to get, it just cannot get anywhere near an Expeed 7 camera. Personally, I am tempering my expectations, and also I think these cameras work really well based on when they were originally designed, when they were released, and probably when most of us purchased them. Of course, today they are aging, and their competitors in the market are certainly selling cameras with their next generation processors in them. So from my perspective, that's probably the most likely solution to bring us up to Z8 and Z9 performance, and along with their peers in the market to bring it up to their sort of AF performance, we need new cameras. And, well, we now have the Z8 and the Z9. They're the top two cameras. Logic suggests we can only have cameras below that coming next. So that is thoroughly what I believe is going to happen. Whether it's a Z6 III, a Z7, or something else, hopefully sometime soon, we will know. Who knows? But as we head from 3 years to 4 years with the Z6 III and the Z7 III, yeah, sure, we would certainly want something to happen in that window. So fingers are crossed. Anyway, that is the firmware update on the Z6, Z7, Z6 II, and Z7 II. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. It's been so good to see you. If this is your first time here, I'd love to see you again, so please do subscribe, please share, please like, and bye for now.